Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Backwoods Brothers. I'm with my man here, Tony.
Yes, Tony, good to be here. You know, last week it was much more full in here.
I know, we had 5 people stuffed in this little studio.
5 VIPs.
Oh yes, well, you know, VIP 1.
VIP 2.
Yeah.
You know, you gotta do that.
We had Mayor Drink Wine from the City of Estacada.
Woo! VIP.
Yep.
Yes.
Double VIP.
Very important person.
We also had Mayor Polium and gubernatorial candidate for Oregon. She's the mayor of Sandy. And then we had Scott Kaiser, or Mayor Scott Kaiser. Mayor Kaiser.
Yes.
Brain's not working, apparently.
Who made us work hard to get him here in the first place.
Oh,
Mr. Kaiser.
He came.
So glad.
And he represented, though.
He represented.
Yep.
Something that was dear to his heart. So feel free to check that out. Guys, the most important people are watching us right now as well, and joining us as we start talking. So make sure to get us out there, like, share, and subscribe. Check out our merch on backwoodsbrothers.com.
Yep, and we're working heavily to update it with we're going to be adding a whole bunch of new stuff, like the Pissed Off Patriot line.
Pissed Off Patriot line, yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And also...
Isn't there Let's Go Brandon?
There's some Let's Go Brandon stuff coming out there, but that's gonna fall under the Pissed Off Patriot line. And there's a bunch of other stuff, too. I don't want to give it away too soon.
Yeah.
But also tomorrow...
What's going on tomorrow?
Brandy, my wife, is starting her first episode of her show.
Well, I knew that. I just want you to tell us that. So, the Big Cheese is going to start the show tomorrow. So happy.
Yep. So we got that.
There.
Yeah, we got that going tomorrow. She's going to be on with by herself. And she's going to be representing what takes us 2 to do. She's going to be able to do on her own.
Isn't that woman power?
That's totally
women power. Y'all can do
things
all by yourself. Except go to the bathroom, because they always go to the bathroom together.
I know. What is with that? It's like it's broken or something.
If you start asking me to go to the bathroom with you, you'd better be old and senile. Anyways, hey, we're talking about today something... we're talking about the church, but in order to talk about the church, and we're also talking about Kyle Rittenhouse first, right?
Yeah, Kyle Rittenhouse. He did an interview.
Right? Yeah, he did an interview. But before I get to that, I forgot to give you something, because I always give you something at the beginning of the show. And when we talk about church and we talk about Christians, one of the things is that we are the salt of the earth. We're supposed to go out and be salty, not salty, not salty, not anything like that, but be salty, making sure to touch people's hearts and make sure to minister to people. But we're going to talk about all that later, right? But I have something for you now. I want to pull it out. It's a little salty. I wasn't able to go get drink, but I decided to go get you out of your refrigerator. Holy teriyaki, man! Dude, seriously,
this will last.
Who does that?
What we do is you take this and put it in a smaller container, and I put it like on my different dishes and stuff, like my top ramen and stuff, which is usually what we eat. Stuff so poor.
Yeah, you need to have all of that to juicy up the top ramen. Yeah,
it's actually great. It works in like a little. We use like a little, almost like a mustard container.
That's not little.
I know, we pour that into it.
How much teriyaki do you use? That's a lot of teriyaki, bro.
Well, that'll last few months.
That's a lot of teriyaki.
I don't think I've even opened it yet.
You know what? I like teriyaki steak, though. You gonna make me some?
I don't know. I'm smoking another turkey here tomorrow.
What?
I'm smoking another turkey.
Hey, y'all, come to his house. I'll give you his address later.
Yeah, that ain't happening. I smoked the turkey for Thanksgiving, and that was pretty good. And and my man here missed it. But
missed what? What did I miss?
You missed a smoked turkey.
Yeah, I missed a smoked turkey.
Yeah, but you'll be getting
for Thanksgiving. Hey guys, happy belated Thanksgiving.
Okay, so
hey, I'm wearing by the way, real fast. I'm wearing a Jesse Lee hat, and
we actually have her set to come onto the show next month.
Next month?
Oh, I know this month. It is this month.
In 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Jesse Lee. Just a small town fight.
Yeah. So Jesse Lee is an awesome, amazing artist.
Yes.
And she actually wrote a song after the fires and about our football team and about military. She
wrote a song about me too.
Did she?
Yeah.
What's that?
I don't know. I'll figure it out.
But you know what?
Don't ask me things on the spot.
I haven't asked her directly, but I'm going to actually ask her if she'd be willing to help us put together a theme song for our show. I haven't asked her. She may say no, but that's fine. I get that.
If she says
and
no,
I'm not putting her on the spot though.
Don't put her on the spot on the show. Okay,
I won't.
But we're talking about something like really important. We brought up Kyle Rittenhouse like 2 weeks ago, but he came back into the news after you asked me to watch an interview of his. I want to tell you, bro. I have to be totally transparent. I'm not a fan necessarily of underage kids doing kind of a vigilante justice type of thing. However, if I were to listen to the media, it would have supported my narrative. Okay. But since I actually decided to hear from the horse's mouth, which you asked me to watch a video when he was on Tucker Carlson. So some people might say, well, he was on Tucker Carlson, so that tells you something. But because he said a couple of things that really, 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 really shocked me. That kid is straight up, but I'll tell you, I'll offer some supporting sentences on why I think he's straight up. Okay. Straight up meaning really good. And so I'm a Kyle Rittenhouse fan. So whatever that makes me, it makes
me. And anyone who says they're not a fan of underage vigilantes or underage people doing that type of stuff, then I guess you got to basically say that you don't agree with any kids that are part of the cadets that are for the both fire department and police department. Well, they're not vigilantes, but they're basically doing the same thing that Kyle Rittenhouse was went there to do.
He wasn't a vigilante.
They don't carry guns. I'll give that much.
Yeah,
okay,
right.
So that's a different discussion, and we'll talk about that later.
True.
But as far as them being like out there and dealing with that type of stuff, cadets for a police department, they think they start at like 15 or 16. You also have stuff like the Eagle Scouts that are out there doing things. Yes. And he went there with a medical bag. Yes, he had a rifle, but I would damn well carry a rifle and the crap that was going on there too. But his intent was to put out fires, and his intent was to treat people.
Didn't he have a relative that had asked him to come down, or he knew someone, or
his dad
over and asked if you...
you know what I love the most thing about this?
Yeah.
They're like, he crossed state lines with the rifle. First of all, he didn't cross state lines with the rifle. He crossed state lines because the city he lived in was on the state line, and the city he went to was 27 or 21 miles away. 21 miles away.
So basically, he crossed over into his backyard.
That would be like
he crossed over his backyard, closed the fence.
Dude, that would be like us driving to. That's like us driving to Gresham, or us driving to Portland. I think is far. Portland is 35 miles away.
Thank God.
So I'm just saying
that's in a different country. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm just saying it's to go out to that area. It'd be like us driving out to there. Yeah. So it wasn't that far. So that's just the media making a big deal about it.
Well, you know that. Spinning it. And
they're like, he went to a town that he didn't even live in. Well, no, his dad lived in that town.
His dad lived in it.
He knew people in that town. He knew the people he was at.
Yes.
He had connection to that town just as much as he had connection to where his mom was.
The day before, he cleaned up graffiti. He was actually doing what Estacada Community Watch would be doing.
Yep.
He's doing those types of services, what the church would be doing.
Yep.
Cleaning up and being down there and being a light in that chaos. And that's what he went down to be. How did he get mixed up into this crap? That's the thing.
Well, the thing, he was down there trying to put out fires and help people. He actually treated a bunch of protesters before all the stuff went down.
Yep.
And so I don't blame him for carrying a weapon, because you saw what happened. If he didn't have that, we probably wouldn't even hear about him, because he'd been killed and left untalked about, except for maybe some local media. But at the same time, I mean, is it good that all people underage should be running out there with rifles? No. I mean, it's the overall thing is, should he have ever gone down there? That's debatable.
Yes, should he have gone down? That's debatable. But really, today's show is actually what his interview did for me was make me a believer of him.
Oh, totally.
It put a human voice behind his actions. And one of the things he said, and I'll quote it to start out, he said, "This case had to do with the right to self-defense. It was not about race. It was the right to self-defense, not about race."
Exactly. That's spot on, because they kept going after him and trying to say that he was a murderer. They say he's a racist. They say he was a white supremacist. Then he was a vigilante. The media couldn't even make up their own mind about what kind of bullshit they wanted to sling.
Neither the president.
The president too. He just.
Oh, did you say the president?
Yeah, the president of the media I'm talking about.
Oh, okay. That's your story.
He finally got me.
Yes!
I have declared that I would never call Mr. Biden Sleepy Joe president, but I actually didn't say president. And
you didn't put those.
I inferred it though.
Yes.
So yes, I owe you a 2 pence.
You owe me a steak dinner anyway. So no, but he said something. He said something about racism.
What are you steak dinner for?
Oh, about what did I do?
Because I tried to smoke you a turkey, but you weren't here.
Okay, but no. I don't know. I don't have time for that. I don't got time for that. But no, he said something here, bro. This is what he said. And I quote again. He goes, I am not a racist, and I support, and this is what blew me away, y'all. Mm-hmm. You have to watch it. He said, I support the BLM movement. Now, before y'all get yourselves in a tizzy, he's 17 years old, okay?
Well, so I think he put a caveat on that too, though.
But right, and I'll put that. So he says, he goes on to say that if he were a person of, well, no, I'm going to go there. He said, because I'm getting ahead of myself. He said he supports the right for the BLM movement to do a protest, but not to burn down buildings. That was the quote. And not to mess up buildings.
I'm right there with him. I support BLM's right to protest. Mm-hmm. I do not support Antifa's right to be a terrorist group. And because Antifa aligns with BLM on many cases.
Yes.
Yeah. And so
I think BLM called just for today to boycott white businesses, by the way.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's Antifa is
like, really?
Antifa is a key issue. Yeah. But now the part where I don't agree with the BLM movement is when they press their issues so hard, and that they basically do stuff like, hey, either get on board with what we say. We're not going to talk about the rest of it. But to get on board with what we say, we want all these reparations. We want we can't be racist because we're black, but you guys can be racist because you're white, and all these type of things I've heard from these different people that have marched with BLM that have said to us over the last couple of years. I don't agree with those type of crazy pieces, but I agree with the fact that they have a right to protest, and in some cases, their message is not bad.
Right, and does
in
racism...
Some cases.
Does racism, does sexism, does any other ism you can think of exist? Yes, it does, because it's sin. There's sin in the world.
Exactly.
So it does exist. Is the system racist inherently? We're going to have a debate there.
No.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, maybe in the past there have been some stuff in there, but we found those and we got rid of them.
We have overcome.
And go ahead.
Yes, but so I don't agree with the BLM movement as a movement. I think it was great marketing because you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And I didn't cuss there. If you say Black lives don't matter or you don't support Black Lives Matter, then that means that you don't support Black lives. Well, the marketing of that little sentence is excellent, but it's supporting. This movement is a sinister movement. It's tearing down families, the structure of families. It's making African American, Black Americans more victims. Mm-hmm. The victim mentality runs rampant.
I believe that, like I said,
the
core center of what they were trying to start the movement with, and the core center of their other idea was, hey, Black Lives Matter. It should be Black Lives Matter 2. Should be the first thing. Or whatever along those lines, and it should be understanding of, hey, there's some areas where racism does exist, and that it needs to be risen up to the surface so it can be seen and taken care of. But that's not everywhere. It's not systemic. It's not inherent in everybody else. And just because you're white, you're not racist. And Black lives are not the only lives that matter.
Black lives are not the only lives that matter.
All lives matter, including law enforcement.
So yes, and so I cannot say that your life doesn't matter. You're my best friend. You're my brother. Your life matters.
The same as
your life matters.
Your life matters. Yes. Everybody life matter equally. There's no one that has any less.
Well, and getting back to Kyle, that's what he was basically saying. He even goes on to say here, Joel. Mm-hmm. He goes on to say in this meeting. He goes, if I were an African American or Black, he believed that he would not have had, or that Black American would not have had quite the representation that he got. He even admits that. And Tucker was like, wow. So this guy says right here, there's a possibility that there is some racism. There's a possibility that there would be some misrepresentation. He said, there's that possibility. I'm doing this for all you. I'm doing this for victims. I'm doing this for those who find themselves in the middle. What business owner did something to the person that's burned down their business? He is about and he is for the person that can't defend themselves.
Exactly.
Sounds like a military type of
exactly. He'd fit really
serve.
well in there.
Yeah.
Hard to serve, hard to defend, hard to protect.
Hard to defend, protect, and defend.
Exactly. He'd probably make a good medic in the army, or God forgive me, but maybe a good Marine.
Yeah. Yes. So that's what he said there. There's some other things that he said, but I want to keep going. But keep going with yours.
Well, yeah, and so like I said, he had some points there that there. Like I said, there are places in this country that have issues. We've seen it, and it's been propped up. But like I said, I think they took a message that had a good purpose and a good ideal and a good heart behind it, and then they took it from here at a good level, and they just threw so over the top. They went so far past what it should have been that it just made it an evil message in the end, because they added so much stuff that's bullshit.
Bullshit. This man was outnumbered. This boy was outnumbered. He makes a reference to a jump kick man. You remember jump kick man?
No.
Oh, okay. So this is what jump kick man did. He kicked him twice in the head while he was down.
Oh, that guy, yeah.
Yes, that was jump kick man. And then while he was down on the ground, someone decides, well, that's not enough. Then I'm going to go ahead and hit him in the back of the neck with a skateboard, which you've heard.
Twice.
Yes. And this was while Kyle was running. He was running to the police. To the police.
Yes.
Now, the day before, or actually earlier that day, he was threatened by white men, by the way, that called him the N-word. That he said. He said the white men were calling him a nigga. Well, if the white man calls you a nigga, you're a nigga. Okay, yeah. So
what I'm saying is
no, but that's what he said. That's what he said. He was being called.
Do you know why he was running to the police, right?
Well, yeah, I do. Go ahead. But
please
make your point, because I'm on fire.
Well, yeah, because that previous point before that is when he had been chased into a corner by that crazy guy with an orange thing on his head and a chain.
Yes.
And he was running towards where the fire was, and then this guy started chasing, so he started running, realized he was in a corner, he had no other choice. This guy was right on top of him, and when he turns around, the guy grabs his gun, and he had no choice at that point but to fire in fear of his life.
Yep.
And so at that point, he
ambushed.
He immediately got on the phone and said, hey, I just shot somebody, reporting it in. I never heard if he called 911 or who. I never saw that part.
If Kyle?
Who he actually called.
Oh, no. This is what happened.
Yeah.
This is what happened. So as he was running towards the line, he had to watch his back. He was watching to see if someone was following him, basically. He had to watch his back. He didn't see anybody, or he couldn't decide who was who, so he didn't shoot. Sounds like a pretty calculated man to me.
Well, yeah.
Because if I was scared, I'd be going... You remember when we were at Threat Dynamics?
You're jumping ahead, though.
Okay, but you remember when I was at Threat...
Yeah, go ahead.
The way he told his story, everything he told was methodical, and everything he told made sense, and everything he told was wow. I didn't think he knew how to use a gun. He said even he locked, stock, barrel. I don't know how he did it, but he made it so that he knew who he was shooting when he shot, even in all of that chaos.
Well, you can get that training before. There's nothing wrong with getting that training. You can get that training probably from from playing video games, I'm sure. I don't know.
Well, okay. But
I got training from the military, so I didn't.
You got training, so you know all that stuff. I don't. But the thing is, he didn't call the police. He turned himself in.
Well, yeah. No, my question is, if you actually watched the video, what happened after he shot?
Oh, did I watch the video?
No, yeah. After he shot him, you see him walking away on the phone. He says, "I just shot somebody." I don't know if he called law enforcement or if he called who.
Because he told the law enforcement when he got there.
Yeah, so I don't know who he called then. Yeah. But then he tried to come back to render aid to the person.
He said that.
But he tried to come back to render aid after he made the phone call.
Yeah.
And then people started coming in, and there's a lot of people started coming in that were, part of that protest, and so he got really scared because what has happened, I would be too. And so he's like, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to start going to law enforcement.
Wasn't he already hit in the head?
No, that was afterward.
He was running towards the line. He was already safe at the line, right?
The first person he shot wasn't after he's running.
Okay.
That was when he got cornered.
Okay.
And then after that, he came back to he made a phone call. He was walking and made a phone call. You see in the video, and he comes back to render aid, and a lot of people started coming in. He got scared and started running towards law enforcement. They started chasing him, and then while they're chasing him, that point is when the thing started. That's when he got. I think he tripped and fell, and then he got kicked twice, and he got hit the skateboard, and that's when he shot a couple people. So
yes,
because that's what I would do. Nothing he did is something I wouldn't do myself.
No, he said I was being ambushed. He says he remember. I wrote down. He remembers in details the ambush. Kyle told the cop when he got there that he had shot someone. So that's after everything you just told me.
Yep.
But he ran to the cop, and the cop told him to go home. And Tucker at that time went, what? Go home? Do you remember that part?
Yeah, I believe I heard about that.
Yeah, told him to go home. Even Tucker was like, what? Go home? Did he hear what he said? So he ended up going, and this is where the media has it wrong. the cops didn't give him a high five and give him a whoop, whoop, whoop. They didn't have time to do the whoop, whoop. Mm-hmm. So what they did, they sent him home. But when he got across state lines again, he turned himself into the precinct, which was Antioch Police Station.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he turned himself in. What type of man who has nefarious intentions would turn himself into a cop after the cop told him to go home?
I probably would myself. I would turn myself.
No,
in.
But that's because you didn't have ill intent. You were stuck in a situation.
Oh yeah, if you had ill intent, you pack a bag and leave the country.
Hey, if you tell me to go home, I'm like, I'm out. You know. But he didn't have that nefarious intention.
Yeah.
And it says, and I said this. He goes, at one point, he says he agrees with the right to protest, which I told you about, and his belief of the BLM movement. He's also said that he didn't know that he was going to be arrested for defending himself. That was one of his quotes.
If you remember during when we actually went to that training out there, they actually said, hey, you very well, for doing the right thing, you may very well still be arrested. That's okay. It's because what you do, even if you get arrested, you still have your lawyer. Your lawyer tells your case the way it is and everything else. And then what happens? You get acquitted or they drop the charges.
But he said this, though. They picked them. They arrested him, but they picked him up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they arrested him without a criminal complaint.
So
so how do you arrest somebody without a criminal complaint?
You can still do it if there's a warrant issued for him. So.
Okay. Here's another one. He also said that one of his lawyers said while he was in jail that he was part of an unorganized militia.
Yeah, the lawyers. Militia. I was really shocked to hear about some of the things that the lawyers did there. Apparently, I believe he said that he had the money early on after 30 days to get out of jail or something like that.
Yeah.
And they kept his lawyers kept him in there till day 75 or 80 or something like that, because they wanted to raise more money for his defense.
Yes, wanted to raise more money for his defense,
quote unquote.
Yeah,
and that is garbage. I mean, I don't care if his lawyers, if it's the same. I don't know if it's the same lawyers that got him off or what.
Yeah, I don't know.
He didn't specify that. He may have said the names, but I don't remember the exact names, and I couldn't clarify that. I need to check into that.
Yeah, watch the interview yourselves.
That is, I don't care if it is the same lawyers. Those lawyers are scum of the earth. I don't care if they got him off or not.
Yeah.
But you don't keep a kid in an adult. He was in an adult detention.
Yes.
You don't keep a kid in adult detention.
For what was it? 90? No,
it was 80 days.
80 days or something.
You don't keep him. You don't keep him in for a day longer than you have to.
Right.
If you're the lawyer and you have the money to get him out, I don't care what you're trying to do to raise money for his defense. You're a dog and you're scum of the earth, and you deserve to turn in your credentials or whatever you do to practice law.
While he was sitting in jail making friends, because he said that he was playing games with them and making friends, because you could tell he's a friendly guy. I mean, wow, he was sitting there like it was. I made some friends in jail, but he said while I was in jail, he said that his lawyers and maybe some prosecutors and the media were smearing him. And saying that he was, calling him a white supremacist, and he urged President. Actually, I got to tell you this, guys. Yeah. He urged the president on Tucker Carlson. He urged the president to go back and watch the tape that you referred to instead of making his own narrative up, basically.
I get you there. And one of the comments that's come in, it says, the more we talk about racism, the more it sticks around.
Yeah.
And it's true. It's especially when it's racism is definitely highly misused. Now, there's nothing wrong with having the talk when it needs to be said, but when everybody's calling everything racist or anything, if you don't agree with them, you're racist or whatever else it might be, is racism this, racism that, it's broke what the effect of that word of racist or racism had. And so... yes, it's way over talked about and it's way misused.
Let me say something to that a little bit. I like that comment. I do. I think it's a great comment. It's not talking about racism. It's the way we talk about racism.
Exactly.
Talking about racism in itself will not create more racism. But the way we talk about racism, I think we need to change that.
So agree. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the way. Well, I mean, no, I don't think the younger generation even knows what the hell they're talking about when they say racism.
No,
because they only knows what the media is fed to them or the bullshit that's been fed to them from around the.
That's why I said
No, I'm not saying everybody, every young generation, part of the generation doesn't know. There's people out there that are very smart.
Yeah.
That are young generation that do have a concept of what it is, but most people, I don't think they really understand what racism really is. I'm not even talking about first-hand experience. I just mean the general definition of what racism is.
Yeah.
The minute you tell me that a black person can't be racist, we're done talking because you have no concept to that.
Well, what it is, why not talk about, instead of racism, why don't we talk about injustice?
Injustice.
There you go. Everybody gets a picture of what injustice means.
Exactly. So, speaking of that right here is a great person.
Someone said that?
No, I would like to know how the third individual that pointed a pistol was never charged with a crime. Injustice, right there. That guy needs to be charged with a crime, and I want to know why he's not charged with a crime. And I think that prosecution in that area needs to be held accountable for that.
Yeah. Now, I'll tell you something. And guys, you might get this one picture of me that I might be a little bit naive. No, I'm not naive to know that the Ahmaud Arbery case was a case of racism. I mean, clearly.
I don't know the details of that case, so I don't have a lot to say on that.
Yeah, looking at that one, there was that. But do I look under rocks for racism? No,
that's the problem. Marches on a town. Marches on small towns and cities to call out systemic racism. When you ask the people that organize those, okay, can you find me one statute or ordinance in our city, or where's something written in our city that runs our city where the racism is?
Yeah. Well, by the way,
they can't answer it because there's nothing there.
By the way, I'm so done with racism. I want to look at the person's heart. So those were three bad men that decided to bum rush a runner that possibly didn't look like them. I don't know what was in their heart specifically, but there were three men ambushing injustice, someone that couldn't defend themselves. So injustice.
Yeah. Well, technically, you could defend themselves. I mean, they learned out the hard way.
Well, I guess so.
So a couple of things here, and then we're right up against our break, so I want to get a couple of these comments out.
Yep.
If you have something to say, go ahead and say it, then I'll bring out the comments.
Okay. He goes, Tucker asks, are you going to go ahead and basically get your name back? Are you going to defend your name? Are you going to hold these people accountable for defaming him? He goes, and I love this, he goes, I have really good lawyers working on all of the details of holding those accountable for the defamation of character. So, I mean, I thought, and then I went ahead and looked up Oregon self-defense law, and I really would love for you guys to look at that, because if you look at that self-defense law, it actually supports Kyle's actions.
Yep, most of them do.
You know this from being a gun owner yourself. If you're going to point it at somebody, a gun at someone.
Here's the thing is what makes Kyle's case so defensible.
Yeah.
He was running away, and they were chasing him. And the only reason why he didn't running and stop, turn, and start shooting at him. He fired when he was cornered, so he couldn't run away. And then once that happened, he tried to run away again. They chased him, and when Chipton fell, they started attacking him. He didn't have the ability to run away at that point. He had to defend himself right there, or he was going to get killed.
He's going to get killed. I thought I was going to die.
But he tried to run away, and they were chasing him, and only when he tripped and fell did he fire shots. That right there is exactly what Oregon law says. It's called stand your ground law.
Stand your ground.
So,
and he wasn't standing. Yeah. That's the thing.
Yeah, he was getting kicked in the head.
He was getting kicked in the head. So yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
So a couple quick comments real quick before we move on to our break here, and then on to our next session with our friend and producer, George.
Yes.
Austin Green. We're talking about some religion stuff there, and we're talking about. I think I have a feeling he's probably going to bring up he's a writer as well, so we'll bring up some things about his book.
Yeah.
But you probably see it during the intermission. You'll see one of his books. Yes,
I'll take him to intermission after you read your comments.
Yeah. So this is the first comment. Bigots exist in all cultures, regardless of ethnicity or color. But most people are not racist. Just some. They don't represent the norm. The next one is. To end racism, treat everyone the same. Yep. And here's the next one. The concept of racism...
Actually, can I go back to that one?
Yeah.
Can we honestly treat everybody the same?
I
mean, I don't want to be treated the same as you. You know why? Because you have a different gift set than me.
Well,
Just treat me like a human being.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a generic thing. So the same is not... unity is not uniformity.
Uniform. There you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when I think when they're saying the same, it's not saying uniformity.
Yep.
It's saying this.
Yep.
Don't say, oh well, because you're black, you can't come in.
Right.
It's not. Don't care. Stop saying color.
Also, because I'm black, don't give me extra treatment, though. Please don't pacify.
Exactly. Affirmative action was probably. It makes no sense these days. It made sense originally because they were trying to stop the racism there.
Yes.
But affirmative action no longer makes sense. That needs to be done away with.
Right.
That's something of the past.
Well, now it's the pendulum has swung.
It's swung so
now
far.
Now you need affirmative action.
Yeah, exactly. It's ridiculous.
Sorry, bro.
Let's see.
We have you on the show because we're trying to fit a quota.
Yeah. The concept of racism was founded on an immoral, faulty BBN made-up history.
Yeah.
How many more lawsuits are on the way? I don't know. It's a good question. Hopefully lots.
Yeah.
I think you're talking about the Kyle part of it.
To be continued, guys.
Yeah. Watch. By the way, when it comes down to media, don't take anyone's single word for it. Check sources, 3 different kind of sources minimal, so you make sure you see the right stuff.
Which, actually, I want to go back and say that, because that's why we're commenting on Kyle's actual interview. Yeah. Go back and watch it. But even then, listen to it with your own ears, not the filters that we
exactly.
have here.
Last one before we go to break. They want a repeat on what you said about Oregon self-defense laws. Basically, I think that was them telling us to repeat on it. So I
have it right here.
The Oregon self-defense law.
Can I read that to him?
Go and read it real quick, and then we'll go to break.
In Oregon, you can use physical force to defend yourselves or others if there's a reasonable belief that physical force will be used on you. Okay. Or others. The simple definition is this. Doesn't change much from state to state. And I'm not going to go on. But that's basically what it is.
What we'll do is we'll
put it up on here, too,
we'll put it up on here, the link to the Oregon.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah,
Me trying to read. Look at that.
Yeah.
Hey, print.
So we'll put it up on the here in our description so you can have it, and we'll basically update the update it for that, so you guys can link to it, read it yourself. But basically, it has something to do with the stand the ground law. So
yeah, and actually it's right here, so I can put that on right after.
Exactly. Okay, guys, well, we're going to go to break, and then after break, we'll have George Austin on to talk a little bit about religion.
Well, thank you for taking us out.
Okay, thanks, guys. Oh, sorry. You can bring us in. Thanks, guys.
is it that the same folks who are going to insist that you're a racist because you have an ID to vote are the same ones who want you to have a vaccine passport to go to an Oregon Duck football game or your grocery store or anything else? And what I want to know is for all the talk about Republicans being dictators and about how we enforce our values and beliefs on everybody else, what say you about Joe Biden this last week? What is it with our leaders saying that they want to force their values and their beliefs onto the rest of us? We are sick and tired of people in Portland telling us how to live our lives. When I asked that question, have you been talking to your spouse or partner about moving out of the state? You all raised your hands. I'm not going to let a bunch of people come into our state and tell us that we have to move. And I don't know if you've been to Missoula, Montana, or Boise, Idaho recently, but you guys, cancer spreads. And if we don't draw the line here in our state, in our communities, we're going to lose this country forever. We got to stand up and fight back. This is the last stand. So with your help, that comes to an end in November.
Most people like Christmas a bunch. And truth is, so did Herbert Grunch. He liked the food, the games, the smells, the way children played with their toys. Doggy!
Welcome back, you guys. As you notice, we have a third person here, George. He's our producer, and we're glad to have him on to talk about something very close to his heart. So we invite you to tune in. We love your comments. We love your questions. Be sure to share, like, and subscribe. Brother, take it away.
Go ahead, George. Is that on you?
Oh, well, hey, we were having a conversation, was it last week or the week before? We started talking. No, it was last week. We started talking about... It was the last time Sean Drinkline was on before this one.
Been a few weeks back.
Yeah, a few weeks back. We started talking about the purpose of the church. Mm-hmm. Because it's easy to look at a particular group of people and say, you know, they ought to be doing more of this or that. And so we started to just kind of talk about what that meant. And it's funny because we were mentioning that this was religion. I think that's how we went off on it.
Well, what we were saying was actually relationship over religion.
Well, that's something that I've heard a lot. And it's kind of hard to not refer to somebody's belief systems as religion. But yes, the whole point when it comes to Christianity.
What's the definition purpose of religion? It's the practice thereof is what that actually falters down to. And so relationship over religion. And so therefore the practicing of it and how basically the rituals are not as important as relationship. They mean nothing if you don't have the relationship. At least in Christianity, it's that relationship with Christ that matters so much. If you don't have the focus on that relationship first, which is because, you know, God actually built the church out of love. He actually created us out of love. So he created the earth, and then he brought us to the earth and made us dominions over the earth. But he created us out of love, and so that relationship is the most important thing there. So if the church, when I say the church, it could be any church, is focused on the religion portion of it, of, you know, you got to be X versus the relationship portion of it, then that's where it's faulty.
So this is the thing. We define what it means to have a relationship and how that looks. Some people, for example, I might play checkers with my kids at night, and you might always take the kid out to throw a ball, and another person might play video games or something like that. And the things that they are doing, that they're used to doing, that's familiar to them, is how they're spending time in relationship. If you decide that the only way that you can spend time with somebody is by playing pinochle every night, and that's just the tradition, that's how we're going to do it, and now your grandkids don't even know how to play pinochle, well, that's kind of like the institution of some churches, where it's like, I don't even know why or what that gown that person's wearing means, or why they're splashing water on that baby's face, or it's just a ritual that they've gotten used to doing that used to mean something more, and maybe it still does to certain people, but, you know, it's different for different people. So it's kind of like, well, who am I to say whether or not that's a relationship? But in their heart, they got to decide. So actually, before we continue, I wanted to ask the audience, please write in the description what you think would be the best use of, you could say a church, or it could be a nonprofit. If you were to have a nonprofit or a church that you were running yourself, would it be something that would be for teaching people maybe to better their lives, or how to be better people, or just educating them about something that's more important? Would it be about reaching people, like to give to people that are in need? Or would it be miracles, healings, how to like reach people so that they're being healed? Please write down in the comments, which one do you think would be the most important use? If it was you, what would you want to do?
Okay. No, like I said, it's important to everybody else to have that understanding of it. But I'm going back to biblical theology here, and because my purpose and my understanding of it means nothing to what Christ's purpose and understanding was of it. And he's been pretty clear about that. Relationship is much more important to him over religion. I mean, he overturned the money changers tables in the temple because that was a practice that he didn't agree with. What he got down to is that personal relationship. He brought 12 in because he wanted that personal relationship. And he talks about relationship all the way through. So that's why it's so important to understand the relationship thing. Now, what does God talk about us with?
Wait. Can you slow down just a little bit? Because you went straight from, you said religion is this and relationship is this. But the fact is you're redefining what religion actually originally meant. Because like I was pointing out, there are rituals that we have done, just like for some people it might be tucking in your kids at night, every night before they go to bed, or praying together before you have some food. That's religion, but it also happens to just be a ritual that could be a part of how you are relating to God and how you're relating to other people. It's not a completely separate thing.
Yes, that's true. I'm not saying it's a separate thing, but I'm saying ritual doesn't always equal relationship.
Right.
Now, also, just because you've always done it does not mean it's the way it is. There was a lot of things you used to sacrifice sheep and goats to cover your sin. But Christ changed that when he tore the veil and he died for our sins. He tore that veil so we could have that personal relationship. That used to be how you used to have that relationship, the rituals. So rituals don't have to always pass down time. There's things that can change based upon the relationship. As long as that relationship is the center of it, the rituals are great on top of that. But if you don't have that relationship with Christ, that center focus, and my relationship with Christ has nothing to do with you or Tony or anyone else. That's between me and Christ. If you don't have that relationship, then none of those other rituals mean absolute anything. It's a center point. And the thing is, when you have that relationship with Christ, he's constantly filling you. He's constantly pouring into you. He's overfilling you. And so that begins to pour out of you into others. And that is a visual thing. You see it happening by wanting to go out and spread that. You can't spread that from inside the church because the church is bound, and you don't have the ability to get that out there. You're people that have it naturally pour out.
You went straight into.
Hold on, let me finish.
Okay.
So now I'm saying just because someone doesn't ever go out on the streets does not mean that they don't overfill with it. No, but what I'm saying is, in general, most people, they stay within the four walls of the church. In a lot of cases, when you start to look into their lives and you start talking to them, their relationship is shaky.
Right.
I've been those people before, so I know. I can put on a good facade on Sunday, but go home and live my life differently every other day of the week.
Right.
So relationship is different. Relationship is there. It's what you have with God, between you and God, and that is something that is not meant with the church there. That is meant to be between you and God. The church is to bring in fellowship and support. If you actually look at the way it talks about it through Matthew, through Romans, through Acts, it talks about the church a lot now.
Right. So did you know that the word church was an Irish word that actually means building? It came from the word kirk.
Actually, I did trace it further back to Hebrew.
So the original word that they generally refer to is ecclesia, which is talking about the church in general. But when we say church, we think of, you said, the four walls of the church, when that's not ever what it was supposed to be.
Church is meant to be international.
On top of that, there's several places where the body is referred to because there's so many different parts of the body that do different things. Now, if your focus is on reaching people, that seems to be your biggest thing, helping people that are in need. Serving people. If that is your focus and that is your main thing, and you have no connection, I don't want to say no connection, but if all you're doing is focusing on that, somebody could think, okay, the best good that I can do is just focusing on this. And the best way for me to do that is to make sure everybody else is doing that too. And that leads you into social services and let's use the government to give and force everybody to do it.
No, I think you took that in a way wrong path.
What I'm not saying is, I'm not saying,
with that 100%.
listen, I'm not saying you agree with that. I'm saying there's a sliding scale where you can go from what is good and perfect and right, a person deciding to serve, and then that could become an institution. We have a whole company where now everybody's able to give, and we're able to take that and give it to people. And after that has been given enough time, it eventually can become this other thing that is no longer having that heart behind it, because in their minds that we're just all about trying to serve people, but they're missing the point because now it's a force.
The same can be argued for the church.
No, because you're using the wrong word there. Because church, what are you talking about? Are you talking about the building? Are you talking about the entire community?
The body.
Because
the church can become so complacent and so locked in to the rituals that they're missing, again, that relationship. And when I say relationship, right, I'm talking about between you and God, but also there's relationship outside of that too, and that's with other people, other believers and things like that.
Absolutely. Because
it says in the Bible, where two or more are gathered, God is there also.
Exactly. It's important for us to not neglect the fellowship of believers, right?
And I'm not arguing that. That's never been my argument. My argument's always been, and I'm talking about the actual institutional piece of the church. That's what I'm talking about. I've always argued about that. I've never argued. I've always understood that that the church, when Christ refers to it, he's referring to the body, as in the whole. He actually talks about all the way through there. Talks about it in Acts. Paul mentions it. Christ mentions it. It's actually when he first mentioned this church in Matthew. He actually, I think it's Matthew 6. He first mentions it. Is actually that's where the word what's the word you used?
Ecclesia.
Ecclesia. I'm sorry, my remembering Hebrew or Greek doesn't work. Ecclesia.
Well, you're obviously not a good Christian if you don't.
Oh yeah, so I don't. Yeah, come on. No, but he actually mentions it in there, and actually I meant in Matthew chapter 5. I always get those two mixed up.
It's not that important.
Anyway, but yeah, he's actually the first one to ever mention church or the body or ecclesia, as you call it. You get right?
Well,
okay. So
yeah.
Anyways, but as he talks about it, he's talking about the body. The people who focus on the religious practices so much was actually the Pharisees.
Yeah.
If you actually look through there. And so that's what I'm talking about. I'm trying to identify the separation of that relationship, that church body, and who we are. We don't have to go somewhere. We don't have to practice a certain way in order to have that relationship. We can have a relationship. We're having church right here. We're talking about Christ. We're interminting with each other. We don't have to be worshiping. We don't have to be praying to do that. We can still have that fellowship. And that's what I'm trying to. That's what I've been trying. My argument's been all along is the concept of today's religion, and this is more an American issue than it is a worldwide issue. It is because I'd
have to disagree.
That's fine, but go to China and find the people that are sitting in a house together, or three of them in a room, just having a conversation about it because they can't have a church because they'll be killed. That's a good example right there.
I see what you mean. There's a complacency that comes with comfort.
Exactly.
And the church was growing rapidly when people were being killed. It was also brand new, fresh, and people knew that if they accepted this, it was a life or death situation. And once it becomes a comfortable thing, then it becomes an institution. Now, institution sounds like a neutral word, but really that's what happens. You take how many colleges do you have out there that started out as basically as churches, and then they eventually became institutions, and now they don't have anything to do with Jesus anymore.
They can definitely grow into something
Tons
awesome.
of them.
I don't disagree. I mean, look what's happening right now with the Salvation Army. Yeah. They just embraced critical race theory.
Yeah,
that's a conversation, and it can definitely go that way. But that's because I believe they lost the relationship portion.
What I was just going to point out was that it is just part of being human, that this kind of thing will naturally happen, and it's been happening. But you might be forgetting, maybe, that when Jesus was talking to the Pharisees, he was saying, "Woe to you, Pharisees, because you tithe 10% of your mint and your cumin and all these different spices, but you don't take care of these other people." But then he says, "You should have done the former without neglecting the latter." He doesn't say, don't do all those little tiny things and being particular. Good on you for being so particular about making sure you're giving your sacrifice. Because as it is, even now, we still do sacrifices. They're not sheep and goats, but we sacrifice our time, we sacrifice our stuff, We just sacrifice our attention and make sure that he's the most important thing.
Of course, and there's nothing wrong with sacrifice.
As soon as you start deciding that this is how the church is supposed to look, and therefore that is alien to me is not what it's supposed to be.
Again, I think
that's
you're putting me in a box.
And I don't mean to put you in a box. What I'm trying to say is, if you are on this side of this, then that would be putting you in a box.
No, I'm not saying that by looking at a particular piece, it's wrong. I'm saying what's been evident in the larger part of the body in so many institutions. I mean the word institution versus church, just to help differentiate that.
Yeah, that's good.
And so what's been lost in the institution and the people that are attending that institution is the relationship piece. Because that relationship piece, like I said, you can see it through all the books of the Bible that when you have that relationship, there's a certain outpouring that comes out. There's a certain reaction you have and a desire that you have to outpour that love to others that seems to be so critically absent in so many ways in the institutional body.
Earlier, you guys were talking about racism, and you were saying, point one out for me, right? Point me out a racist. Point me out a racist a law that's just point it out. Because there's this vague concept that there's this evil out there and we need to fight against it. But point it out. Like, it sounds to me like you've got a certain concept of this is all of this out there, but that doesn't mean that it's all bad.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's all
bad.
And
there's actually a whole lot of good there, too.
Yeah, I'm not.
Well, and
I'm
you say a majority too.
A majority from what I've seen, and this is from what my pictures, and when I've talked to other people too. It's not just my vision. There's other people that agree with me that the church has grown complacent. And I say the church, the institution, and the church. I don't say the church too. The American church, that's the American body, has grown complacent in so many ways, and they're missing that relationship piece that comes out of that. Now, the relationship piece out of there, I know we got some comments, so I don't want to forget those. But the relationship piece that comes out of that, like I said, there's evidence of that. When a tree is healthy, and he talks about it in the Bible. When a tree is healthy, what's it do? It bears fruit, right? So, but when the fruit isn't being barren, and the fruit doesn't mean not necessarily be souls, as so many people, salvations is what we've attached that fruit to. But fruit is something just loving your neighbor. Christ also identifies that as fruit is just loving your neighbor, because you're not doing the work to bring top to bottom. Sometimes you're just giving a piece of that puzzle and God's doing the work on the backside. We don't see the whole thing. So that fruit that we're doing might just be simply loving your neighbor, helping them out, doing a yard for them, simply being there. And then God's doing the work, and sometimes you get the fruit of it saying, hey, why is it that you guys do so much for the community? And we can say, because the core center of who I am is Jesus Christ. Because the love he gives me, I have to outpour to others because he died for we can go into that. And we've done that many times on our just my family alone, doing services in the community. We've had that opportunity. So, like I said, it's all about that relationship again.
So let's come back to an earlier point, because the first thing that I mentioned of those three things was having something to do that really struck home for you. But the other two things, one was teaching, one was miracles and moving in the Spirit.
I never said anything about those.
I said those two, and then the third one was serving the community. And as soon as I started mentioning, if you go too far in this direction, this is where it can end up. That was just an example of how the pendulum can swing. Yep. If you go too far in the spiritual direction, you end up with people who don't pay any attention to what the Bible actually says anymore. Instead, they're, let's say, holy rollers rolling in the aisles or stuff like that. I don't want to cast aspersions on something, but you've seen people who have taken it and turned it into a cult, where they don't actually have any founding on real scripture anymore, and so people are getting sucked into something that's wrong.
That's why, right? I mentioned scripture so many times this one, and that is to what is the core foundation of the scripture that he says there, and that is love and relationship.
So what is the negative aspect of somebody who focuses too much on just the teaching?
That's a teaching, because while there are teachers in there, if you focus too much on it, like you just said, you're missing that core piece. That core piece always needs to be there, no matter what it is. Now, you may be so filled where you are teaching, you're still outpouring. Teaching is nothing wrong with teaching. I never said there's wrong with teaching.
I'm not saying that either, but if the focus is entirely on teaching, let's say if the pendulum swings too far in that direction, I'm not saying that you can ever have teaching that is too good. Okay, I'm saying that if the focus is all about the brain and Bible knowledge, the Bible says that knowledge puffs up, but love builds up, right?
Yeah.
And so you're missing out on something that's much more important when all you have is the focus on that. But we talked about the body. There's 3 different parts that I was just describing. Mm-hmm. You've got the giving to people, you've got the spirit, and you've got the knowledge aspect of it. And if you don't have all 3 of those,
it talks about that in Ecclesiastes, actually, about it. It actually breaks it down. It's where they're breaking it down, talking about the different parts of the church, and they're actually talking about this case they're talking about the widows that used to go out, and the ladies used to go out and serve the widows, but there's also old men who teach. And you go a little bit further into that scripture. I want to say it's Ecclesiastes 5. I want to say it's Ecclesiastes. I may be getting the wrong. I want to say it's Ecclesiastes.
It's not Ecclesiastes. Maybe you mean Ephesians.
Ephesians, thank you.
Ecclesiastes.
My head gets mixed up. Thank you. Ephesians. So, see, that's why.
Maybe it's Ephesians. It sounds more like Ephesians.
I want to say it's Ephesians.
Was it Ephesians?
It's Ephesians.
It's Ephesians.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, my brother Tony over there.
Yeah.
True religion is this: to look after widows and orphans in their distress, and to keep.
Yeah, but it also talks about the elderly who teach, and not to discourage that. And I'm not discouraging any of that. All that is great, and all that's biblical. Mm-hmm. Okay, but like I said, none of that matters if we're missing the relationship, because that's still all that's built upon. You remember the point where it says where Christ says to Paul after he says, he says Peter, who I'm because actually I think he changed it to Paul. Simon gets changed to Paul. Anyways, I'm sorry, my names get
to Paul.
Names get mixed up.
Or are you talking about Peter?
When he says upon you this rock I build my church.
That's Peter.
Is that Peter? Okay. See, sorry, names in my head get mixed up.
Peter, yeah.
So that's why I wanted my notes so I can actually give you the names, because I actually confirmed my stuff earlier when I was looking it up, because I wanted to be able to talk about this, and I left my notes sitting in my office.
I just wrote a few things down that I wanted to be able to say.
And mainly I wanted to be able to identify the scriptures for you so I could at least name them right.
Sure.
But anyways, upon you I build this rock. And now...
upon this rock I build my church. Yep.
Yes.
That's what you meant.
That's what I meant to say. Thank you for the correction. Anyways, so I got myself so confused on names, I've lost the point I was trying to make there. What were we just talking about?
Well, I think maybe you were talking about how when the early church was forming... just before the stoning of Stephen, they were having trouble with making sure all the widows were getting fed, and Peter was like, we shouldn't neglect teaching in order to take care of this.
I remember what it is. And Christ just asked Peter, who do you think I am? And he says, you are the Christ.
Earlier, okay.
Yeah, and then he goes into right after that, so upon this rock I build my... upon you, upon this rock I build my church. But that still comes back to that relationship of identifying who Christ was. So if you actually listen to what was said there and what's written, it's actually pretty clear. It's that it's upon that relationship that was identified that he was able to build that church and basically build the body. And it all comes back down to that relationship. Without the relationship, none of the rest matters.
Well, I'm not sure if that particular scripture, I'd have to look into that more, applies to it. I don't think what you're saying is wrong, but I'm not sure how it completely fits with that. And what I want to come back to really agrees with what you're saying anyway. But the problem that I think people have in general is that they tend to see one thing that they would choose. And that's why I'm really curious about the comments. They would choose one aspect of this that would fit them the most and neglect some of the others. So do we have any comments on that? We can maybe take a look at a few of them.
Okay, so the first one says, loving people through being there, showing them God's love, reaching those that would never go to church, teach them how to have a relationship with God.
Oh, she didn't pick one thing. There's a few of them in there. What else? But that's okay. Well, that's just fine.
Everything's going to say Brandy because she's just sending it to us.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, Brandy's just her copying it from our comments into us.
Bring Tony into the conversation. Well, Tony said he's going to be the fly on the wall. We kind of figured it was going to be between Joel and myself.
Yeah, and so just to give you a history, Tony's been a pastor and everything else. And when we had the conversation that night, a lot of it had to do with him and I. But I think Tony's kind of holding his stuff. I think he'll come back in with something at a later time, maybe not this show, but I think he's reserving that right. Would you agree, Brother Tony?
Well, I'm waiting. I like the dialogue that's going on here. I've had some interesting things to point in, but the conversation's
It's
kind
really
of teetering. So go ahead, keep going.
Yes. Okay. So
Let's just get a couple of these.
Once you get the next one here.
Okay, that is literally what Jesus taught, was helping people better themselves, gain some better morals, and live a more peaceful, fruitful life.
Okay. Next one is pro tip. God sees everything, so if you're faking it on Sunday around church, God sees that. Be yourself. Stop lying to yourself and God.
That's a hard one, I gotta say, though, because I think that we lie to ourselves all the time. I mean, it's going to be a struggle. It's just part of human nature. But true. we gotta find the truth.
The body is forgetting that people need to be shown love. There are so many people put there that the Christians in religion, because they hate Christians in religion because it feels fake and empty. There are people that need to see that love from you in order to be reached.
So I want to point out something. To be a Christian and the word religion, both of those have now a negative connotation because we are aspiring, as somebody who is a believer, I'm aspiring to be something better. But I'm not there yet. That's the thing you got to remember. Like, I'm a Christian, but my life is really screwed up right now. And the whole point of, I have him to look at. He's my focal point that I know is going to be solid and rock solid, because everything else is going to just be screwed up. At least I'll get back up every time I fail. That's the thing. You don't just keep failing and not get back up. Well, we're not going to suddenly be perfect.
And no matter what people think, we're always going to be dependent on Christ.
Mm-hmm.
We're not perfect. We never will be. And so because of that, we're going to have a dependence on Christ to help us. So, and that people once asked, I've heard this question asked. You look like you have something to say.
Go ahead, keep going.
So, it was, people asked the question, why is it that God gives us challenges in life? And I think it's to give us the opportunity to show our dependence and need for Him.
I love that.
Amongst many other reasons, but I think that's the biggest one. Is it allows us to have that opportunity to depend on Christ to show that He's there and He's able to come through in the end.
I think it's the love of Christ that compelled Himself to appoint Peter as the rock of the church. Because if you look at Peter in his initial makeup, he is impulsive, cutting off the ear of the centurion, and Jesus goes, basically, put that back on. And he was just impulsive. He denied Christ. He was kind of all over the map. But yet, because of Christ's love, Christ saw him as he would be, not as he is. And that's why Peter is called Rock. That's the name of Peter, being a rock, when he was not rock-like. And I love that Christ takes nobodies and makes them somebodies in Him. And He tends to pick the imperfect people that don't look like we think they should look.
Right.
Yes. So often.
Right. And if you go off of that first judgment, you can make assumptions. So what I want to come back to is that first question that I had said, what was your choice when it comes to that? And it was a trick question. So my favorite verse is 1 Corinthians 13:1. Mm-hmm. And even if you don't read the Bible, you've probably heard it at a wedding. It's maybe not really that fitting at a wedding, but they always say it because it's like poetry. It's easy to remember. So it's, if I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give all I have if I have the gift of knowledge and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give all I have to the poor and surrender my body to the flames, I have nothing. If I have not love. I'm totally butchered that, but the point is, every one of those is without love. You could be doing the knowledge thing, let's teach people, but if you don't have love, like Joel was saying, not like Joel doesn't have, like Joel doesn't have love. This empty husk of a man. No. But if you give everything and that's your big focus and you don't have love, okay? But part of the thing is it's all three. You do need all three. And it does tend to be that if you're focused on teaching, you don't tend to do as much giving. And that might be because teaching is your gifting and you're just that part of the body of Christ. Sometimes I feel like I'm the ass of Christ.
I feel he's referring to the donkey that Christ rode upon.
I was trying to say, well, he tends to use those.
I
mean, ass means donkey, right?
Said it and proved it at
use
the
a
same
donkey,
time.
right? Yeah. But you're right. It's the both. It's the both. It's the. But he always tells us to go out and make disciples. Right. It was never meant for us to stay within this block. But he always said, go out. Go out.
And Joel, you're totally right about that. Because he was saying the same kind of thing. Yeah. That these people come in and they're just complacent. They're not really doing anything with it, or at least that's what it seems like.
It definitely. I mean, and it's God gives us discernment. I'm not saying anything with my end, but God gives us discernment, and I believe that when someone has a relationship with Christ, you can definitely feel that. I mean, I've heard that so many times. And when someone's distant, I think it also can be evident as well. But we're like 7 minutes past over, so I wanted.
And to fit your point, I've heard the analogy that in order to build a good fire, you need logs. So logs need to kind of congregate together to build a fire. Once you begin to take these logs off of the pile, the fire begins to die down. So maybe if we look at church as not, like you said, that building, but that gathering of people. Now, it happens to take place at a building more so than not in the Western culture. But, also Jesus went to the temple too. But, at the same time, the church is more organic than that. So if you are following the body, if you are integrating into the body is for the building of the saints. So we do need to congregate together to build up. Birds of a feather flock together, but we're supposed to fly out too. Yes. So we flock together to get empowered, to get strengthened, but we can fly out after.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And the key thing,
like that dump station.
Exactly. And so let me just wrap up with my point on this one, and then we'll give George a chance to finish up here because we're past our time. So my point has never been against the fellowship of people. It's never been against the teaching, and never been against the worship piece. None of that. My point has been against the institutional piece that has lulled the church body to sleep in America, and has caused them to lose the sense of that relationship because they're replacing religion with relationship. And so that's the point I'm talking about.
But also the point actually has an and to it, and because of that complacency, we've lost the love for the needy, the poor, those who need to.
And in many cases, our own selves. God calls us to love ourselves too.
Right. Well, you have to love yourself before you can love others.
Exactly.
Really, we get that wrong in the church. It says, if you love God, then you're going to love others. Well, what about me? Well, it says, love your neighbor as yourself. So I can't love you unless I love me.
Bing, 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 right on top of the thing there.
So, body of Christ, many parts, and it was really clear. The eye can't say to the hand, I don't need you, let's cut it off and throw it out. You need every part of the body, right?
I think actually Christ calls us, if we're sinning, to cut off our hand and throw it out.
Well, that's a different verse.
That's a different story. But
sorry about that one.
At any rate, the point is just your own discernment of what is the best thing to do might not be the best thing for somebody else. So the question is for you, are you getting knowledge? Are you learning in some way? Are you getting fellowship with other believers? It doesn't matter how big the group is, but it should be 3 or more people that you're meeting with regularly and learning about or getting built up spiritually, right? And are you doing something to give, right? I mean, I'm sure there's more.
I want to say serve.
Good, serve. Because, you can't always give something. And if you're the kind of person like I have felt like I am, where life's just kind of hit you really hard and it's kind of hard to give much more, that's even more so the time to connect with people that you need fellowship with. I mean, so it just depends on who you are when it comes to that.
Okay, guys. Well, we're way past our time here, so I want to thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you here next week. Next week, we've already starting to look at some. I think we want to talk a little bit about Omicron, because the Omicron.
Yes.
There'll be something for next week.
There's another variant, guys. there's going to be another variant. Omicron sounds like a transformer.
I know.
Anyways, I just have to say that. I just like.
I don't want that in my system.
Right?
Yeah, I don't want
I'm going to get the transformer vaccine.
And we don't know if this vaccine necessarily, but I mean, we've heard
Hopefully
Biden say he's
we'll
not going to
know by
lock down the
next week.
country. He did say he's not going to lock down the country. Well, he said it.
Well, okay, so that means he's going to. If he says he's not going to do something, he's going to do it. If he says he's going to do it.
Like if he says he's not going to fall, he might fall.
Like he says if he's not going to fall asleep or poop his pants.
He probably does that on an all basis.
My butt's
okay, guys.
We just reached the bottom of that one.
Well, you know what? All I have to say to finish this up today is let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Oh, yeah.
See you guys next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.